Hello, guys. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Film Angle. My name is Kris.
And I'm Alex.
I'm really glad that you could be here today, Alex, because I didn't think that you'd. I just kind of felt like you were going to close out on us last minute because I got a text from you last night that you weren't really feeling really well. So I'm just protecting the audience so that they don't think like, what's wrong with this guy? He sounds like a sniffling mess. No, you don't. You sound
Yes, little bit congested, but I know we've got some breaks coming up probably with me going away, so I don't want to cause any more breaks than we need to because we got two, pretty big films from the BFI list to
Mhm.
go through today.
Yeah, we don't usually double bill it, do we?
No, but it's interesting. These films are actually like kind of work together very well. If
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're almost quite similar in a way. Even though one's a documentary and one's a fiction film, they kind of have the same kind of stuff going on. But yeah, I just I'm here. Don't worry, no last minute exits from me. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go. I'm ready.
This is very much like these two movies. If you're hearing us talk about them, and we're going to really try our best here because it's they're two very girthy films in terms of what they're trying to portray or come across. They're both very dreamy. I think that's a commonality that they both share.
Yeah,
There's a sort of trance-like state that I felt, at least a couple times during both of these feature films that we watched. Sometimes I think one more than the other. But yeah, we're going to try our best to navigate both of these. I think they're both really interesting. I really loved the first one. I don't know if you want to delve straight into that.
yeah. Are we talking about Daughters of the Dust first?
We are indeed.
Cool. Then yeah, Daughters of the Dust.
So, Dollars of the Dust is a poetic and lyrical reflection on the Gula culture of the coastal islands neighboring South Carolina and Georgia, where old African customs and rituals were still held and maintained well into the 20th century. This film is set in 1902 and centers around three different generations of women in a Gula family on the day that some will take the journey to the mainland of the US, leaving their ancestral ways behind in exchange for a change of, potential prosperity.
Very
Um,
nicely put, Chris. We should have you on the synopsises because I really messed up La Dolce Vita last week. I was like, it's Italian and it's
I do. I
it's
do
good.
not. I do not blame you for the Dolce Vita because that film is sort of aimless by nature.
Yes,
Um,
but like so is this. To be fair, just you just put it so poetically, so nicely. I couldn't have put it better myself.
well, maybe because I kind of fell for the spell of this movie, and it was kind
Mm.
of easy for me, in a way. Um, First off, straight off the bat, Alex. I mean, did you feel the same way as me? Were you kind of along for the ride that Julie Dash, the director, writer, and producer of this film, was trying to take you on?
Yeah, I think I was for the most part. When you said at the start it's very dreamy, I kind of it's one of those films that it's quite easy to zone out because of just how smooth and mellow it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at
It's
the
very
same time,
relaxing. Yeah.
very relaxing. But at the same time, I was completely intrigued by this kind of slice of life, this culture of the Gula women or the Gula culture. I say Gula women because the film focuses mainly on the Gula women
Mm-hmm.
over the men, but the culture of the Gula people. Yeah, I wasn't aware of any of
Yeah.
this. So I was really fascinated by that, and it is like you said, it's almost like it's like a historical document despite being fictional, with very kind of like it's almost poetic, isn't it? It's like a film with many poems and this kind of clash of past, present, and future coming together, and
Mm-hmm.
how the kind of the culture's affected within this timeline or multiple timelines.
Multiverse
The multiverse of Gula.
still existed in 1991. Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit also that I had never heard of Gula before, both as a language and as a group of people. And I was sort of just instantly enamored with what it must have been like to have lived in a community, sort of reckoning with their, recent history of slavery and the abolishment of slavery, dealing with their spiritual connection with their homeland and their ancestors, and while also somewhat very close in terms of geography to modern civilization, they chose to live a secluded life that is more centered around the family unit. And I find that just really interesting, just to sort of see these sort of people reckoning with the future and the past at both at the same time, and
Yeah,
that's sort
because
of generational.
it's the enticement of going to the States means that potentially you are going to lose your connection to the past because of kind of how well this culture kind of remembered um, its time and its culture and its ancestry before, like you said, they were stolen from their homeland and were forced into slavery. The idea of going to this kind of modern United States, even though I guess technically they kind of are, but the mainland United States is kind of like this enticing place despite their past. But yeah, it means they will potentially lose that connection that they have to their ancestry. It
Yeah,
is
and
worth saying as well, this is the first film directed by a black woman to receive a major theatrical release. I say major, I think a national release in the States, and this was 1991,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
which is
kind of
not
ridiculous
it's not a
that
long time ago.
it's
No.
not a long time ago, just over 30 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's staggering to think about. I believe that the subject matter of this film and the significant impact that it has with film fans and critics over the years makes it worthy of having that title, of being that first, her to be the first one to do this, of coming from a female African American background. So, of all the movies, yes, it's too late, of course, but of all the movies to do it, I think it's the right one.
Yeah, it's quite the kind of first feature film to get out there, and unfortunately, Julie Dash never got round to making a second feature, or at least uh, has there been anything recent from her? I'm trying to have a
I
think.
think she's like somebody who consistently works in television, but
Yeah, she
you're
got
right.
she did a lot of TV movies
Hmm.
and documentaries, but I think she said in a recent interview, I say recent, I think it was like 2017. She said like
I think it
there
was,
was nobody there to kind of
yeah.
promote female directors. Like she got her one, and that was all the industry kind of allowed her to have at the time.
I think at the time that her style of filmmaking, it's sort of this film has a non-linear structure to it, and I think that was producers maybe found that scary back in the time. I think that's her version of the story, is that she wasn't commercial enough. But then you think about it in the context of race, in which this film is concerned around. If this was a white man with American auteur, he had made this film, I'm sure he would have had many more stabs in the industry post the release of this film, considering its critical acclaim. So it feels more like she's a victim of circumstance and not her own sort of vision and power, because she seems like somebody who I'd certainly be interested in seeing, what she'd be capable of in the future, because this film feels different enough from other things that I have seen that tackles these sort of issues. It's very ethereal, dreamy, like we said. That I'd be really interested to see how she tackle other subject matter. I think she has a real artistic eye first and foremost.
Yeah, I agree, and fair play to her to kind of, get the chance to make a feature film and obviously shine a light on an aspect of kind of African American culture that, I'm sure within some circles was of common knowledge, but for even today, like you and I had no idea until
Hmm.
watching this film, and you can see why the kind of historical importance of this film probably is why it's so high on the Sight and Sound list.
It's not this fixation on the atrocities that have happened in slavery. There's a reflection on it and how significant it is to where these people are in 1902. But I think the strength of this film, it really captures both the allure of keeping away from Western civilization. The island of St. Helena that they live on is shot as if there are only ever sunrises and sunsets, which is like very evocative not only of the end and the beginning of a new chapter, but also in registering the island as this sort of self-contained paradise for this family and their neighbors. There's a real comfort in the familiar, and the world beyond these young women who are deciding to leave is, while definitely hyped and bolstered up by their friends and cousins who come back to visit, and they're all dressed up in their the Victorian regalia, and they look so beautiful. it's still uncertain as to what awaits them. And that's what it sort of boils down to. Daughters of the Dust is a film about people who have never really felt like they've belonged anywhere, but they're trying to belong somewhere. And the commonality they have is the strength of their lineage and their family together. And it really, I think, you know, to quote Vin Diesel, I think family is the core is the core center of this film. I'm sorry, I
That
couldn't come
was
up with a better parallel.
such a beautiful way of putting it, Chris, until the very end there.
Punctured it with some lowbrow Fast and Furious talk.
Kind of loved it though. I feel way too ill to kind of. I have no way of kind of bouncing off your amazing words right now.
Oh, thank you, Alex. No, it's just I was just really taken for the ride here. I just thought I was really, you know, and the more I kind of stir and think about it, I think she did a terrific job considering how, you know, non-structured this film is. It's not really plot driven. It's centered around one single day, and
Mm,
you know, I think it just really is a different sort of flavor of African people that I have never seen before. That experience I have not been able to witness on screen.
mm. I agree. I agree. And I loved the kind of sprinkles of magical realism that were kind of thrown
Yeah,
in there. The obviously the framing device of the photographer coming to take pictures
Mr.
of the
Sneed.
Mr. Schneed of this kind of moment as they kind of consider moving over to the mainland, and obviously when he's taking these pictures, you see because it's worth mentioning as well. The narration is done by the unborn child, uh,
Yes.
so you see the child in the pictures. I think there's a is the dad or the or one of the kind of elders from the
So,
past is also in the picture at one point. It's kind of
mhm.
like that merging of histories, like they're all in this kind of one moment together.
Yeah, that sort of framing device with the unborn daughter is probably like the most emotional aspect of the story. You know, it's the mother is Ula and the father is Eli, and Ula had visited the mainland previously. I think it was mentioned and suffered. You know, she was victim of a terrible rape incident with a white man who Eli suspects could be the father of their unborn child. You know, or he could be. It's kind of unknown. The unborn child, a little girl, obviously, like you said, narrates over the film. And we see like moments where she just sort of magically, like you said, in a realistic way, appears and disappears, which, you know, she represents a future that can come and go at any moment. I really sympathized with Eli, who obviously loves his wife so much but has to contend with the atrocity that's happened to her, or whether to carry on being the husband he wants to be and love their child unconditionally. This dilemma is really kind of hard even by modern standards, but I think in the context of, you know, the racial context and the historical period that it's set in, that this particular human experience, I felt like I really felt for both of these people. It's a real sort of dilemma, you know. I think it's really interesting to follow that story along and just sort of see him kind of be molded into a better husband for his wife. And there's this really poignant scene, I think, where he's posing for a photo from Mr. Sneed, and the girl just appears beside him in the photo, and then she disappears. So it's this sort of what this can be and what it can't be. And I thought it was a really, you know, tragic but lovely moment shared by both of them, even though they didn't kind of know they were sharing it together. But
Mm.
yeah, yeah, I like this movie a lot. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. You do you know? I struggled with an element of the slowness and the dreaminess, so I did end up having to watch it in two parts. I put it on of an evening,
Mm.
and
I
it's
watched it in the
like this
afternoon.
very kind of it's almost like a lullaby, isn't it? Like this beautiful music, beautiful imagery. I was in a
Mm.
trance, and I found myself just about half an hour from the end starting to just waver a little bit. My eyes were getting heavy, and I was just like, I like this film, and I need to give it the time. So like I was like, as much as I'd love to have seen it in one sitting, obviously. Thankfully, really good copy on BFI player as well. Was able to pause the BFI player and and come back to it the next morning and just kind of finish it off with the
Mm.
yeah.
The soundtrack's really like dreamy too. I think
Yes,
I
I've
kind
seen
of.
a lot of people say it's a bit too much.
Oh no, I think it's so. I think it's very of its time. It's very like.
Yes.
I think I had to look at who the composer was, and I haven't really seen any other major works that he was involved with. But he worked on the music department for a lot of Michael Jackson albums. You know that kind of comes through. You kind of hear that little sort of synthy '80s, early '90s quality that you
Yes.
see in a lot of TV shows. But it kind of just adds to the magical nature of this film a little
Yes.
bit. I think I actually thought it was a highlight of the film. A major barrier that audiences have sort of mentioned over the years that has made them struggle with this film is sort of Julie Dash's commitment to having the entire film spoken in a Gula dialect.
Mm.
Did you struggle with this?
Um. To, all right. So there is a segment early on where it is subtitled. I'm right in
I
thinking.
think it's a warming up exercise.
Yes. So as I start, so like it almost helps. So I was able to see what it was saying, and I was reading the subtitles, and I was like, okay, that's not really. There's not much difference there. Like it's said in an accent that's not familiar to me, so I'm
It
gonna have to
varies.
think
Yeah.
about this a lot more. So yeah, to be honest, I didn't feel like I came up upon it too much. Probably the odd word I might have misinterpreted or mistranslated.
Yeah, I thought it only sort of added to the intrigue of these people, and it is a perfect summation of the themes in Daughters of the Dust. Their dialect is literally a split down the middle of that southern state drawl mixed with the African inflections, and I probably, in all honesty, understood probably, I would say I'm about 95% of it I got. I think it depends. There are some characters that come in later in the story that are a little bit harder to understand, but even moments where certain characters were talking at once and it became a little bit more, I don't know, difficult to tune into exact phrases, I still understood the context of the stakes and the emotions um, of these characters precisely when Julie Dash is first and foremost a visual storyteller, and I think the choice at the beginning of the film where she uses that bit of subtitle is a really good choice. Kind of and warms us up into the Gula dialect, but it's just a real sort of tribute to the people and being a really honest portrayal of them and their background. I don't know, were a lot of the actors um, in the story were they of Gula descent?
From what I read, I don't think they were.
Well, it's a really good job, like performance
Yes.
wise, from all of them because it's not it's not easy language or dialect to sort of portray in a way that lends itself to acting necessarily. I think they did a really amazing job.
Give it a go. Go on, Chris. Give it a go.
Oh no. Misappropriation.
uh,
I will save myself from that. I'll end up sounding like somebody from Cloud Atlas.
to be honest, that is the correct answer. I was just gonna say.
You were honeypotting me.
I really was. I really was. I was like, go on then. Go on then. Give it a go, mate. Give it a go.
So, right, you obviously have a vendetta or a beef to squash with me, and we'll discuss that after the podcast. One last thing, I think performances maybe aren't the thing you think about with this film, even though I just mentioned that everybody performs really well. But I think the standout in this film is the elderly matriarch of the peasant family, Nana, who is played by Cora Lee Day.
Mm.
She is the representative of old Africa, their family ancestors, and it pains her to see her grandchildren and her children grow. She doesn't want them to sort of leave her and leave her alone on this island, but she also doesn't want them to become overly Americanized, to forget their history and the pride that they should have for their homeland of Africa. And just the raw emotion that she injects into these scenes, she's really magnetic and really just commands every scene. I think she makes everybody else look like second grade. Not that they are. It's just she commands it in such a theatrical, almost over the top way, but it really rings the message home. And I think it was a performance I just wasn't really expecting this, especially from a performer of that age.
Yeah, no, she was brilliant. My other favorite performance in this was Barbara O. Jones, who played Yellow Mary.
Yes, yeah.
Really, really thought that was a great performance as well.
And she's stunning to look at as well on screen. Really like magnetic sort of aura around her. I think they do that a lot with this film in general. Like everybody seems to have an aura about them. You know,
Yes. It's just a very warm glow about the whole film. Honestly, like as much as you said, like maybe don't watch it in the evening when you're all tired and sleepy, but
mm.
sure, sitting down, having a nice hot drink and just kind of bask in the warm glow and the kind of lyricism of the dialogue with this very soothing, mellow music. It was very cozy. It was very cozy.
You sometimes watch TV in your bedroom at night, right? Or do you have like
Yes.
you have the projector? You have like
Yes.
yeah. So it's like for me, I'm still that grown man who he falls asleep to SpongeBob and
Oh, okay. I
and
thought you were saying like I'm a
Albert's
grown
Got
man. I have a TV. I don't.
no, I think the projector is way more superior
Yeah.
than my
Though to be
TV.
honest, it's not. It's not. It's not a great projector. Let's check it out. There. It's a cheap projector off Amazon to watch TV of an evening in my bedroom. I did watch this one on the TV. This was a big TV
Okay, okay. But
one.
so is Daughters of the Dust going to be like the sleepy Alex movie now? You're going to put this on in the evening and have a little kip to it?
Could do. It could be the SpongeBob of my world.
Last night, for your information, it was the SpongeBob Halloween episode. Sent me straight to sleep like a baby.
Very good. Very good.
There's a little insight that people might lose respect for me now.
Yes,
Um,
if you didn't know Chris was a massive SpongeBob fan, well, you know it now. But to be honest, we all are. Just I guess some of us just haven't seen episodes in a long time.
specifically seasons 1 to 3. After that, it goes a little bit haywire. So yeah, Dollars of the Dust. A movie I don't know why I kind of thought I was going to struggle with, reading other reviews online, but I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really cool experience. I thought I learned a lot from it, and I was emotionally invested in this sort of like this one-off film. Obviously, it is a one-off film because Dash, unfortunately, hasn't been making as much work of late. But yeah, I'm really glad to have caught up with it. It's going to stick with me for a while.
That's good. Yeah, I don't think I loved it as much as you did, but I did enjoy its kind of historical significance. I like the fact that it kind of was a lesson in a culture I wasn't aware of. I liked its kind of poetic and musical nature. Loved how cozy it was. That is, yeah, that's my summary. I was a little bit worried about the next film that we're going to see and how or saw, should I say, and how I would react to that, especially after this film. So, shall we move on to Sans Soleil? So yes, Sans Soleil, 1983 documentary film directed by Chris Marker, who was the director of the short film that we've watched previously and recently, Le Jeté, of which we both really enjoyed, I think.
Loved that film. Yeah.
So I was intrigued to see his documentary film here, which is the kind of it is Chris Marker's own words and narration, despite the fact that he himself does not narrate it. He almost pushes himself away from it. But again, this is why I'm not as good at summaries as you are. But it's basically the thoughts of a world traveler who kind of goes on about time and memory. And kind of this kind of world of images that he's captured on his travels, along with kind of images from fictional films. And yeah, the main kind of location is Japan, but it
Yeah.
also covers a
Yeah.
couple of other places as well, Iceland and San Francisco being a couple of them. But the main kind of musings and thoughts and philosophical kind of meanderings happen in the kind of culture of Japan. And I won't lie, Chris. I won't lie. I struggled a little bit with this film. I struggled a little bit.
I felt that up to about 50% through the runtime, I was like, okay, I'm on top of this thing. I'm on board. I'm on its wavelength. Then it just got a little bit of a barrage of thoughts and musings. almost to the point I was a little bit inundated with things to ponder and think about and it was all moving so quickly that I didn't have enough time to really kind of reflect on each chapter I mean,
Yeah.
each chapter in this is probably about 5 minutes apiece, and it jumps and jumps and jumps through things where I'm sure there's such amazing nuggets of inspiring and poignant thoughts and feelings about the world and how memories and how we lose memories and how that's sort of interconnected with, in a global spectrum and how it relates to history and war. But it was just too much to keep up with. I don't know. There is Florence Delay who narrates this film. Depending on which version you are watching, I didn't realize. So actually, I finished the film that there are in fact four versions of it.
Yes, and there is an English language one because I imagine you watched the same as me, which was the original French
Yes, I did.
language one with
Yeah,
subtitles,
it's
obviously.
also in Japanese and German, I believe. But yeah, there's an English version. But I would like to revisit it again, maybe in English, and just to see if I can kind of enjoy those visuals a little bit more. I'm not somebody. We're both people who are really used to watching subtitle films. I think probably about 50% of the films we watch in a year are probably subtitled, and we're no stranger to sort of digesting that material. But I think there's such density kind of thrown at you on the screen at each moment, both visually and sort of lyrically, that you're kind of trying to keep up with both. And maybe sort of the musings are kind of getting lost and diluted in the process. That's kind of how I felt.
Yeah, I felt at times like I was just reading things, but I wasn't really processing them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm the same as you. If I enjoyed it more, I would maybe seek out the English language version. But I did think that like I thought it peaked quite early on.
Mm.
There's some really great stuff at the start, and I think probably one of the, and I believe this is probably one of the more iconic moments is when our narrator is kind of talking about like I don't know why at film school they tell you not to look at the camera, and then you have these kind of faces in
Yes.
it's like a fish market almost of these women who kind of are looking at the camera and some trying not to look at the camera but looking up at it, and he captures these kind of beautiful
The,
moments
yes.
and
It's
kind
in
of
Cape
ponders.
Verde. This part of the film is taking place in.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's really poignant. Yeah, it's sort of this sort of exchange between, noticing how, in documentaries, how subjects kind of pretend that they aren't on camera, and then there's this sort of exchange that kind of happens between the documentarian and the subject, and it's some interesting moments there. I kind of enjoyed it when it was kind of focused on Japan and not bouncing between, six different countries at the same time. I felt like I
mm,
was able to sort of focus in on the dreamy memory aspect of it. I really enjoyed the scene where it's focused on a train journey, and the camera is looking at is a collage of individuals sleeping, and kind of mirroring that with what perhaps maybe their dreams might be in that moment. It's quite playful, a little bit self-indulgent perhaps, but it's playful, and it's enjoyable in that respect. But yeah, I kind of have a bit of a complicated relationship with this film. I think the Jete, which really was razor focused on what it was trying to do, but still being very dreamy at the same time. There are moments in Sans Soleil that are transient, and I think the first half of it really manages to do this. But yeah, it just becomes a little bit of a barrage of a lot of moments intercut and sliced together, and some of them, I kind of we bring up animal cruelty a lot. And
yeah.
some, and there is a moment here. It's very, it's rare. It's of an instant, but boy, does it kind of loom a shadow of the film. And I feel like it perhaps was maybe the most inconsequential part of the film in terms of lending itself to any sort of narrative
I think if
significance.
anything, it for me it was a wake up call. I was kind of zoning out a little bit. I'd gotten to the point where I was like, some of this kind of philosophical stuff seems a little bit too heavy in like the way of like, come on, dude, really?
Hmm,
Uh, and then so
hmm.
I'm starting to zone out a little bit, and then boom, giraffe shot through the neck.
Yeah, and
Uh,
like and fountains of blood.
yeah, not cool. Yeah, wasn't expecting that from what we'd seen previous to the film. Really
Yeah,
enjoyed the penis museum. Uh,
you know what? You know what? I expected this. I expected this. When I was watching the film, I watched it stone faced. I'm proud to say I watched it not even with a smirk. And I was thinking the whole time, Alex watched this and he was pissing his pants.
I mean, there was no one else in the room, so I guess I didn't get like the reaction wasn't as big as maybe you're imagining it to be. But if you were in the room,
There was a grimace at least,
if
at the
you were
very
if you
least.
were in the room, a lot of comments would have been made. But yes, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It peaked at the penis.
I don't know even what to say. Or yeah, or there's you know, when you watched the film before me, and then you texted me that, you know, beware, there's you know, there's a scene of animal cruelty again. I was
Yes.
like, okay, I thought it was you were talking about the moment with the taxidermy animals having sex with each other.
Yes.
I was like, is this cruelty? I was like, okay. So I was really shocked. I thought it was over and done with by the time the draft came.
Well, this thing, I always question how much to tell you on these things. I like to warn you off because I think we both kind of would have preferred more warning with Tuki Buki when we watched that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was considering whether to say like look away when you see the giraffe, but at the same time, like that's kind of taken away from the film. Like that moment is there to kind of puncture through and kind of and like I said, it gave me a wake up call.
Mm.
Kind of got my attention back. But apart from that, I didn't really see the point in that.
If I,
Like I didn't like obviously he didn't shoot the giraffe,
this is a stock
uh,
film.
and
Yeah,
yeah, he's gone out of his way to kind of find that footage. It's not great. I didn't want to see it. I've
yeah.
seen it. My mum loves giraffes, so I don't. I wouldn't recommend she
Not
watches
a
this
strong
film.
recommend.
Not a strong recommend on the giraffe front.
A light recommend.
No,
Uh, wait,
no,
wait,
not
wait,
not for my
wait,
mum.
wait for a sale or heavy discount.
Not for my
um,
mum. Not for my mum. But
I think,
yeah,
yeah,
for others who want to kind of complete the list, see a film that's very highly regarded as a documentary, then sure. But for me, I don't know. This, do you know what? The whole time I was thinking was, do you know who would have done this better? I think, and maybe that's a horrible thing to say, but Agnes Varda would have done this better.
it would have been cheerier.
It would. I enjoy her thoughts on things a lot more than I enjoyed Chris Marker's thoughts on things.
Well, it's a shame. I don't know where I'd stand with him because I was such a big fan of Legette, but you know, maybe he's better when he's restricted. I need to watch more of his films. I think he's sort of he comes from that French New Wave period. He's sort of in line with guys like Godard. But yeah, one person who really does love this film is Kirsten Johnson. I know we mentioned Camera Person a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
She is really she. This is one of her favorite films of all time. And
Yeah, I can see that because Camera Person is almost quite similar in that way, where it's footage from what she's documented through her life as a camera person.
hmm,
And I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that film. Was there narration with that film, or was it just kind of footage spliced together?
I remember being footage, and like
Yeah, there was.
there's a lot of moments where she's interviewing people or you know,
Yes.
behind the camera, and it's, you know, it's done in a very kitchen sink way. But I
Yeah.
don't feel like it was overly, you know, it's an unconventional documentary. It's not a talking head thing.
Yeah. So maybe she took the lesson of like less is more. Whereas I feel like Chris Marker just doesn't. Well, it's not him again, but I guess it is his writing. So yeah, Chris Marker doesn't let up.
I
It's just
I
it's constant dialogue throughout the whole thing, pretty
I
much.
do think his dialogue is very eloquent. I think if I was to read it in a book of poems, I would find a lot to bookmark and highlight because there are some he has a way with words. I will say that.
Yes,
Even reading
there
it,
are certain elements of this film I agree with. There were certain phrases I wish I could recall them. There were times where I was just like, "This is a little wanky," but
that's the first time you've ever said that.
I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how else to put it.
Letterbox quote, a little wanky.
It's just I was trying to find the right word for it. I was trying to do it earlier, and I was kind of like going around it. But there's the only way I can just.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so some of it brilliant. Like when we're watching the footage of people asleep on a train
Yes.
and kind of sleeping on a bus, and he's thinking about what their dreams must be. And then it splices in kind of Japanese pop culture and films. I like this idea of kind of like creativity comes from banality, like all that kind of stuff. I love, and like I said, but
Hmm.
again, this is all within that kind of probably first half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been a good short film,
I,
like Ligeti was.
yeah. I think there are a few. Like, there's some quotes to take away from it. I think that the opening shot where we're spending most 90% of this film we're spending in Japan, or off the west coast of Africa later on in the film. But we start off with a stock footage of three children in Iceland in 1970. Well, like these Aryan, almost looking children, and they're the most Icelandic looking children you've ever seen in your life,
Eh,
walking down the road, and he's mentioning the cinematographer that is being narrated through this. Yeah, it's a little bit of a contrived framing device, but he's explaining that he tries to capture joy or convey moments through cinematography to an audience, but struggles to make the audience continue latch on to what he is feeling in the moments. So he shows the footage of the children, he intercuts it with 5 to 10 seconds of blackness, just a
yeah.
screen of blackness, saying that if people can't see the light, then at least they will see the dark, and then they will see the light. So it's quite poignant and quite quite French,
Yeah, and it's
in
at
a
the
way.
start.
And it's at the start, and maybe that moment where we were reminded of it with the killing of the giraffe, maybe that's what they were going for. That's me stretching, to be honest. Um, that moment does come an hour and 10 minutes after that moment, so there's a lot of that too. And by the end of it, there's a lot of these sort of thermal desaturated clips of Japanese television or war footage where you're trying to kind of sort of like a dream when you're trying to recall and clamor your way through it and find you know the meaning behind an image. But that became a little bit overabundant too, where I was a little bit exhausted by it at that moment, and that didn't go away. I continued to get more exhausted as the thing went on. It's a shame. I mean, maybe it's because I was keeping up with the really fast paced narration. I will one day revisit this in English, and maybe I will feel differently. Maybe it might take away from it. Who knows?
Mhm.
Maybe I might even have a worse experience. But certainly,
Sometimes French does sound very, very romantic and very good, doesn't it? Like the French have a way of putting things where obviously we don't understand it, but when you see it on a subtitle, you're like, "Oh, very good, very good."
I think the thing is I'm trying to get at is that you're trying to process so many cultures through the lens of another culture. So it becomes a real like lesson in your own sort of mental fortitude that I'm trying to tap into an exploration of the world through a country that I do not live in and a language I do not understand. And, and perhaps maybe having that filter sort of narrowed by just having it with English might improve that a little bit more.
Yes, and I agree, and also because the images are so striking, you are naturally looking down at the subtitles and then back up to the image. So there's an element of that. But you're right. Like we are watching a French language film talking about Japanese culture. Um, sometimes,
So there's going to be a disconnect
yeah, there's a
naturally.
disconnect. Sometimes slightly ignorantly, but for the most part,
Yeah,
eloquently.
sometimes racist remarks come up.
Yes, yeah, I was slightly taken back by that, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, weird, weird. I just didn't know what to make of this film at the end of the day. I started to zone out, and when I tried to recall certain parts of the film, like I
It's
said, it's mainly the
it's like a
start of the
dream.
film.
It's kind of like a dream when you're trying to recall certain moments and you just can't quite tap into what even the moments that worked, why they worked.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't remember all the phrases as well as you seem to have with a couple of moments that really stuck with you. Yeah, for me, it was cat sanctuaries, women looking at the camera, penis museum, and a giraffe being shot. Those were the kind of the moments I
um,
remembered.
a monkey's in missionary position.
Oh yes, yeah. See, I keep forgetting about the taxidermy part, which is strange, right? The
That's
penis is
that's
last
that's
gave me a more lasting impression.
well, I think they're equal. They're equal. I think I like the penis that was dressed up like a man.
I'm gonna just cut. I'm gonna cut that as a soundbite, and
I like
just
the
put it as
penis
my.
that looked like a guy.
Every time you message me, the ringtone is just gonna be, "I like the penis."
I like the bit with the penis. Yeah. I'm conflicted. I'm sure people probably listening can tell. There are moments I liked. I think first half I was like, "Yep, I'm all in," and then I think it just became a little bit more enjoyed its own musings too much, and it
Mm.
came across as a little bit. I don't like to use the word because we're dealing with art house cinema, and we like to keep an open mind, especially discovering the BFI list. I feel like we're open minded individuals, but this did feel like the one time so far that I felt that pretension might have been kind of overtaking the project.
Yeah, I don't personally feel this film should be on the list, and I had a really strong reaction to The Gleaners and I. And I know it's silly to compare it to the one other documentary film so far on this list, but Gleaners and I should be up there. I had such a strong emotional reaction to that film that I felt kind of empty and cold here.
I think The Gleaners and I benefits from having more positive impact on our world as well. Watching it, I think it's something where I learned about a group of people, and I felt a warmth to those people and the documentarian behind it. And this, I feel like, I feel Chris Marker's a really eloquent guy, but there is a coolness to the film too.
Yes, and a wankiness.
It was a bit wanky.
uh,
Oh, I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else to say about this film. I think it was
no,
a really
no.
interesting double bill. I think they are sort of connected thematically if you
Well,
want to push for it.
they both
In
kind
time.
of capture a culture and a
Mm.
period of time. They're both kind of poetic in their kind of way of going about it.
Yeah,
I
I think
feel that I feel at a depth with both of them, or out of my depth with both of them.
I don't think
Uh,
you're out of your depth with Daughters of the Dust. I think
but yeah, no, I know.
we yeah we
If
feel similar.
if I was to recommend any, I'd recommend Daughters of the Dust. And yeah, I can understand, despite, if it was, I don't think I would put Daughters of the Dust on my personal top 100 favorite films of all time, but I can fully understand why it's on the list, the BFI Sight and Sound list. I can't find, the deep down why this one's on here so much. I think maybe it's the idea of like this was maybe an inspirational film for many, because this idea that you could just like pick up a camera and travel and then just kind of like write these kind of essays
Hmm.
about your travels and connect them together. Like I could go back and probably go back through my old holiday footage. I have, hours and hours of footage of me at Disneyland, Florida in 2014. Uh, yeah.
I'm
Maybe I could
asleep.
make a
I'm asleep
travelogue.
already.
Maybe I can make a travelogue film out of that. Back when I had a mop of hair and my teeth were too big for my head.
A
You
mop
know?
of hair. You have more hair than you've ever had in your life.
Yes, well, yes, but it's not a mop anymore. It's like
Well,
it's a more thought out Qui-Gon Jinn head of hair rather than just like a bowl cut.
okay, I'd love to see the return of the polecat.
You're
It'll
not
go.
going
It'll
to.
make a return. It'll make a
You're not
return.
going to. You're never going to see that ever again.
Well, no. It was a pleasure catching up with you, Alex, talking about these two films. I
Mm,
think they weren't easy films. I wouldn't
they
recommend
weren't.
them to everybody.
No.
These are as like a lot of films on this list. They are make sure you got a liter of coffee beside you at all times. It will help enhance your experience.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
But no, I would say Daughters of Dust really enjoyed. Sans Soleil a little bit more tricky for me. Probably one of the lower moments of this list so far, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, so yeah. Which is a shame because obviously we really liked La Jetée, and I think that's a worthy short film on the list. So you win some, you lose some. Chris Marker, not that he cares. He died in 2012. So
Certainly doesn't care. I don't feel bad anymore.
next week, so next week's episode, we are returning to I was going to say modern release, a new release, a new
Yeah.
release in cinema. Woohoo! And another note, the writer strikes are now over or about to be over. So we're just waiting to see if the Screen Actors Guild are going to follow the same way, and the cinema might be back on track, baby. Bearing in mind that they get a good deal. and the studios aren't screwing anyone over. Anyway, a new
Fingers
release. It
crossed.
feels like it's been a while since we've had new release in the cinema that we're both actually quite excited for, and that is Gareth Edwards' The Creator, a film we're both excited for. And then Chris, I don't know if you're going to be able to get around to seeing the next BFI list before our next recording.
I'm putting in a lot of homework for Saw, of all things. This is the world we live in now. That Saw is coming out, and like that's what we got to be excited about.
So
But
you're gonna watch Saw over Jean-Luc Godard's Contempt.
we'll see. We'll talk. We'll leave our listeners in suspense for now. But
Okay.
Wednesday's the deadline, and I will try my darnest to fit everything in.
Well, I forgot to say, Fritz Lang is in Contempt.
Oh,
He plays himself. I just thought that was interesting. It is a director of, Metropolis, which we recently spoke about, in a BFI Silent Sound film. So
he's got to be really old in that.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
That is correct.
That is correct. Not my blind spot, but your blind spot, and I will catch up with it to remember my thoughts on it. But I do think it is one of Jean-Luc Godard's best films.
The emphasis on the Jean, I think you.
It's a great name, isn't it? Jean-Luc Godard.
Just think of Jean-Luc Picard though, because I'm a Star Trek nerd.
Yeah, see, I don't.
He'll always be my Jean-Luc.
Nah, see, Godard is my Jean-Luc.
Battle of the Jeans.
There's a great moment in Faces Places whenever you get around to watching that with Agnes Varda, and she calls, she's like, Jean-Luc, you little rat.
That sounds right up Varda's.
Literally talking about Godard as well.
Brilliant. No, I'm looking for. I need to watch Faces Places. I'm certainly coming off the Gleaners, and it's a must watch.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do like an Agnes Varda marathon or deep dive at some point after this list, just because. Yeah, brilliant filmmaker
that we've signed up for.
But yes, Gareth Edwards, the creator. Are we going to be? Because I think we're probably quite similar on him, where we've always been excited for his films because they look amazing, and then they usually let down a little bit by the script.
I think his movies look amazing, but I don't know. He usually writes on his own films, right?
I think so.
I think they are usually laced heavily with tropes that tend to kind of. Are kind of what we've seen before and repetitive. I'm kind of fearing that a little bit. The creator, I think visually it looks amazing, but there's elements in this trailer I can see. I've seen in so many other films, so hopefully he does enough to make it feel injected with some sort of new sci-fi breath of fresh air. But yeah, again, I'm excited to see something that's new and original in this genre.
Yeah,
that doesn't come from any sort of source existing IP. So respect for getting the film like that made on screen. It looks beautiful, so I'm really excited.
So come back next week for our thoughts on that. But yeah, that has been the Film Angle for this week. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle. You can rate and review us on all podcast platforms. Always really helpful. So please give us a 5-star review.
You can't see him. He's on his knees right now.
We're not desperate. Please. 1 5 stars equals me feeling better.
Exactly. You can't put a price on that, right?
Can't put a price on my health.
You feel better. I feel better.
I've got a cold because we haven't had a 5-star review in a long time. So come on.
His essence is running out. Each
day that passes, my nostril closes slightly more.
I think that's more of an incentive to the listeners to not read than anything. I want to see that nose collapse.
Oh, God. Hopefully I'll be better as well on the next recording. But yes. Anyway, that has been the Film Angle. Like I said, my name is Alex.
My name's Chris.
Goodbye and good night.
Bye-bye.